close reading is a skill that many of you have already figured out is hugely useful in other areas besides literature. As writers, developing that skill is going to be crucially important to improving your own work. That seems obvious. That's part of why you're here. Most of you have figured out that improving as a reader is something you have to do to improve as a writer. Because you can only learn to successfully shape your work and exploit its potential when you understand how it's working and how it's not. Remember, that means breaking down with equal precision why something is operating well. Think about what we were doing with those sentences yesterday. And what you would normally expect, which is why doesn't this part work? Everything that you read carefully will be training you toward that end. Your development as a writer can be dramatically accelerated, right? Everybody imagines creative writing can't be taught. That's probably true. It can be learned. And your development can be accelerated. Good teachers can save you a lot of time by helping you develop, by helping sort of speed up the process of the development of your own internal editor. I think we operate, when reading fiction, precisely the way we operate in life, when we're paying the most focused kind of attention. And that is, we assume almost always, because we have to assume, that we can intuit the interior from the exterior if we pay the right kind of attention. What people do and how people do it is very often, in life and in fiction, all we have to go on. Why did Mom say that? Why did he make that gesture? I'm going to read it. What you're looking to teach yourself is how to practice the best sort of reading. In other words, how to become a reader that's consistently rigorous, consistently fastidious, and consistently optimistic. You should demand that of yourself. You should demand that of people who read you. If they are those three things, everything they say to you will be of value. I read Carol's work rigorously because I'm going to treat her like an adult. I read it fastidiously because I don't have the right to sort of say, yeah, I actually skipped over that part. Or I couldn't figure it out, so I went back through it. I read it optimistically because I say, here's what your work can be. And in that gap, we have a kind of bracing instruction that doesn't demoralize. Here's what your work can be, that's the good news. Here's what it is, what are you going to do about that? I believe, and I think you will come to believe as well, if you haven't already discovered, that the best reader responses that you can get are wearying, in that they believe that anything can be improved, and they're a source of hope, in that they believe that anything can be transformed. Now, to that end, this method I'm about to shower on you is a special treat that some of you with foresight might decide to write down. I recognize that some of you as well will be a stony ground on which my speech shall find no purchase. But what are you going to do? Here's one method to keep in mind as a way of improving your ability as a reader of fiction. Let me get my students, they say I love the blackboard.
Does this apply to nonfiction too?
No, it only, of course it applies.
I just want to make sure.
You can quit listening.
No, in fact, for nonfiction, Emily, I have a different thing, which is just blow through that shit. It's a 5-step process, so it's actually easier than getting over alcoholism. Okay, step 1, and you'd be surprised how often people have to be told this. Read the thing more than once. I don't know how many times people have come up to me about complicated stories and gone, I didn't get it. And I go, well, what happened when you read it the second time? And they're like, Read it more than once. Number 2, now you read it if you read it more than once, step 1, you read it through like you're a human being. I'm sitting there, I'm reading literature, I'm not worrying about, okay, I loved Emma Bovary, I had no idea what he was doing, this is great, love that. Finished. Step 2, now I'm going to read it again, now I'm going to mark it up. And when I'm marking it up, I'm marking what I love. Oh, I love it. I'm marking stuff, what is this all about? I'm doing every kind of, I'm making all sorts of marks, right? This is all obvious stuff. Here's where it gets weird in my case. Then you go back and you read only the last 2 or 3 pages of the work. And having done that, you begin again with those 2 or 3 pages immediately in mind. Go to the end, read last 2 or 3 pages, and do a Mobius strip. Come right around to the beginning. Because remember, this whole thing is supposed to be heading towards this. This whole thing is supposed to be culminating in this. This is the revelatory material you've been moving towards, supposedly. So now you want to figure out how this machine is working. Here's the revelatory material you're working towards. How did I get there? There are all sorts of stories in this packet that as soon as you do this, you go, wait, whoa, whoa. This is where we were headed? This is what this whole thing is working towards? Notice what this allows you to do. Many of you, when you're first constructing stories, will sort of go, I think it's about A, I think it's about A, I think it's about A. Oh, B, 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 C, D, it's D. And you're like, what happened to A? And you're like, can I keep it? I wrote all that stuff. You know, you do. Writing is hard enough work that you will have this impulse to want to save anything that's halfway decent. You'll be like, but I like the squirrel scene. And I keep it, must fit in somewhere. And it makes sense to not, we've been talking about how intuitive this whole process is. It makes sense to not throw stuff out simply because you can't articulate exactly how it fits in. But whether or not it fits in is often very clear when you do this. Okay? So you begin again, and then, and this is very important too, doing that, you skim for its larger features. And what I mean by that is, now you're reading along, reminding yourself what each scene or section or chunk seems to be doing. And remember, as we were trying to demonstrate in here, your task at first is to describe, not to judge. You're not sort of going through, is this work, you're going, okay, what does this think it's doing? What does this think it's doing? What does this think it's doing? That can be a very bracing self-tutorial in proportion. What does this think it's doing? Mom's mean me. What does this think it's doing? Mom's mean me. What does this think it's doing? Mom's me low. I'm starting to come back to this. Do I want to be this obsessive? Is the rate of revelation dropping? Am I giving you any more information than you had before? That kind of thing, right? And that finally takes us to maybe the most important. And that is you mark those moments that Nabokov in his afterword to Lolita called the nerves of the novel, the secret points, the subliminal coordinates by means of which the book is plotted. What he means are those moments which, when connected, give you the clearest sense of what the work is most interested in. They're the elements to which the work keeps obsessively returning. They're the elements that are most urgently at stake in the work. Here's the way I do it. I start making arrows. Yeah. Right, so I'm doing this sort of thing. And then when I'm going down the page, I'm sort of going, oh, look, this is the pattern, this is the obsessiveness with which stuff is returning. That also allows you to see areas that are slack. How many of these obsessive areas are we returning to here? None. Well, the revelation is clearly dropping, right? That will happen sometimes. No, we've already talked about that. Chicken recipe. What's the chicken recipe? Yada, 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 yada. Now notice in terms of what we're obsessing about, that's a big block of time when narratively and thematically we're kind of on hold. That's one of those moments that your previous way of articulating it would be, I don't know, it just seemed to slow down there. Or do we need that? Or whatever, right? But you're trying to figure out the overall shape so that you can say to yourself more precisely why each effect is happening. And this is the process that I use.